Being a farmer and a YouTuber over the last 6 years, I have gotten many, many questions from many different types of people. But overall, the most common question of all has always been, how can I become a farmer? I've had so many people reach out to me over the years saying that they have some space, they have some land that they could grow on, but they don't really have a lot of money. And so they're really curious about how they could start up a farm of their own. My best piece of advice that I can give to people hoping to become a farmer who aren't a farmer yet, who don't have any money, is to go start working on someone else's farm. You can get so much education as well as you get actual money, right? So if you don't have any money now, you can start saving up that money for your own farm. It makes so much sense to go learn all the mistakes that you're gonna make on someone else's dime instead of doing it on your own. If you can get a farm job for yourself, that's gonna be the best start you can get into farming. But not everyone can take that advice. A lot of the people that reach out to me say that they have young kids. They don't necessarily have the time to work full time. They need to be able to prove that this farm thing is gonna be possible. And often they have zero budget for doing this. The truth is, farming is really expensive. The farm that I built probably had about $250,000 invested into it. You know, that was over the course of many years. That represented investments like employee costs that, you know, really should be not necessarily considered farm investments, more just, you know, operational costs. But you know, it took a lot of money to build the farm to the place that it was, and it was going to take a long time before that investment started to really pay off. So I completely understand not having the budget to start a farm. And so what I want to share with you guys today is I only have $100 and I've never done this before farm plan. Well, I don't think it's gonna build an incredibly successful flower farm. I think it's something that anyone can do for a year to build a budget to be able to start a flower farm. And it's gonna give you the education and the experience working as a flower farmer to know if this is something you really want to pursue in the future. I feel incredibly lucky that I'm never limited to $100 budgets when building my gardens, and it's because of viewers like you guys and also sponsors like Magic Spoon. Magic Spoon creates cereal and treats and a brand new high-protein granola that will appeal to the adult in you and thrill your inner child at the same time. Magic Spoon fits a variety of diets. Its cereal has 13 to 14 grams of protein, 0 sugar, and 4 to 5 grams of net carbs in each serving, so you can feel good about what you're eating. The brand new granola has 13 grams of protein and 0 sugar and comes in delicious flavors like peanut butter and honey almond. Magic Spoon treats are crispy, crunchy, and airy without the chewy stickiness of a protein bar, with 11 to 12 grams of protein, 1 gram of sugar, and 1 to 2 grams of net carbs, so you can always get the fuel you need on the go. Magic Spoon is childhood reinvented. The same great flavor, but upgraded ingredients. I'm not a morning person at all, so it's not like me to sit down to a breakfast. So I've really been enjoying the granola and the treat bars, especially this marshmallow one, as something to just have on the go for a snack. Honestly, this granola is really good. I like this a lot better than a normal granola. I'm not the type to enjoy a protein bar. I just really don't like the texture. So these little granola clusters that are crunchy and light, they really fill that snack craving while, you know, fueling me for the day. Use my code YCETG or click the link in the description to try Magic Spoon's treats or granola and get $5 off. You can also find Magic Spoon on Amazon or in your nearest grocery store. And Magic Spoon is confident in their products. It's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee online. So if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. So click the link in the description to go to magicspoon.com/YCETG or scan the QR code on the screen to get $5 off. Let's get back to farm planning. Step 1 is my favorite part of any flower farming plan. It's spending all the money. So $100 really isn't a lot of money. If you've never grown anything on scale before, it might feel like, you know, you could buy a lot of different things. You go into a dollar store, you see dollar seed packs, you're like, I have $100. I could buy 100 packs of seeds. That could grow me hundreds of plants. But when you're a flower farmer, one of the most important things is to have a consistent product throughout the year. So even though $100 could, in theory, get you hundreds of plants, what you really want to do to build and establish a farm business is be able to provide a consistent product from week to week. And having, you know, 100 different plants in a couple here and there isn't really going to give you the ability to do that. And it's also going to take up a lot of time and a lot of mental space that you would be better off putting towards learning to grow one thing really well. The other thing is, things are freaking expensive. You don't realize what it takes to have a farm. Those nickels and dimes are the thing that really kills you in the long run. At our farm, we had spent, I think, $20,000 on irrigation. And that was, you know, 10 cents a foot pipe. That was, you know, fittings that only cost $1 each. It's kind of shocking that it added up to so much money in the long run because we had to buy so many of those little parts. For example, in this budget, you cannot afford to buy seedling trays. I recently did some pricing at the local nurseries, and a bottom tray like this is selling for $2.99, and a 72 tray that is not reusable, that's a single-use tray, is selling for $1.50. I went and I looked on homehardware.com because I'm in Canada, so I was thinking maybe the prices are a little bit different. And they were selling a set that came with the tray and the bottom tray for $8.50. So when you're growing things at a farm scale, the plan that I have, it's going to need you to have somewhere between 9 and 12 of these trays. And if you're paying $8.50 for every single one of them and you're buying 12, we've already spent our $100. So we can't afford to use these. What we're going to do instead is we are going to buy a soil blocker. I've looked on Amazon and you can pick up a cheap knockoff no-name soil blocker for only $15, which may not be I'm not gonna say that this is a high quality product. I'm putting my name behind it. I'm not saying that it's worth $15, but I do feel confident that it'll get you through the season. And then instead of buying the bottom trays, what you're gonna do is you're gonna use containers that you have around your house that could hold soil blocks. This is, you know, a little bit more of like an expensive container, but think of things like when you buy baked goods and they come in the plastic packaging, that kind of thing. Perfect thing to use to do those soil blocks. It's going to be the $15 investment at the beginning of the season, but it's going to allow you to make 100 trays. So we're down to $85. The next thing we're going to have to spend some of our money on is a bag of soil. The soil that I buy it in a big bale. I go through a few of them a year back when I was on the farm to grow seedlings, but I was growing tens of thousands of seedlings. This plan is going to involve growing, you know, 1,500, 2,000 seedlings, so we're not going to need that much. I priced in, it looks like you can probably get a bag of soil that's going to be big enough to do most of these soil blocks for about $10. And obviously you can look around, maybe locally you can find a better deal than that. So now we're down to $75, and all we have is the ability to grow plants. Now's the time to make the big purchase. What we're going to do is we're going to go on to sunflowerselections.com and we are going to buy pro-cut sunflowers. And I'll include the website down below in the description of the video. Sunflower Selection is the developer of pro-cut sunflowers, which is a single stem. That means it's one and done. Each seed makes one flower. It's a very fast growing plant. They take about 60 days from planting until bloom, and they're very, very beautiful, very gorgeous, pollen free. These are a florist grade sunflower, and they're absolutely beautiful, and everyone should grow them. And sunflowers, even though they are probably one of the least exciting flowers on a flower farm, are something that you can get away with growing and selling because there's going to be someone who wants them everywhere. So I got our pricing here. So shipping for our order is going to be $8. So now we're down to $67. And then what we're going to buy is orange Pro-Cut Downy Mildew Resistant. So Pro-Cut Orange DMR, and we are going to buy 1,000 pack at $23, and then we're also going to buy a 500 pack at $13. Then we're going to buy the Pro-Cut Plum. We're going to buy a 500 seed pack for $13. And then finally, we're going to get Pro-Cut White Knight in the 500 pack, and that one is $17. So this order is going to be $74 for the 2,500 seeds and the shipping. And that means we spent all our money. Everything's done. You're gonna get on this website and you're gonna see all the beautiful different sunflowers, and you're gonna think to yourself, well, why am I buying only 3 varieties? Why am I buying 1,500 of the orange when I could be instead buying 100 of every single one that's on the website? And the reason is, yet again, the most important thing as a flower farmer is to be able to let your customers know that you can provide a consistent product from week to week and year to year. You are now a sunflower flower farmer grower exclusively. And you're only growing these 3 varieties because you want to be able to provide that consistent product from week to week. Honestly, if anything, you could drop down to just the orange sunflower. It's the standard, it's the classic. If you don't have the space to grow the extras, you can get rid of it. Having those extras, that's just fun to tack on to the budget. That's the ability to, show florists that there's different products available. That's the ability to make mixed bunches of colored sunflowers. But basically, all you're doing is every week you got bunches of sunflowers. When I grow sunflowers, my favorite way to grow them is just direct seed. Put them straight into the ground, let them grow, see how it comes. But a $100 budget doesn't leave a lot of space for mistakes. So because of that, we're going to be growing them as seedlings. Because of the $100 budget, you do not have the infrastructure to be able to grow seedlings inside your house. Even a rack like this is going to cost you more than $100, let alone the lights. This is something that you can think about investing into in the future, but you don't need a rack like that in order to be able to grow seedlings. The best grow light of all is the sun. The reason why a lot of people don't use the sun, they use these lights, is because things take time. And the one thing that the $100 flower farm plan is depending on is that you are gonna have time that you're gonna invest into things. You don't have the money, so instead we're doing sweat equity. I'm a zone 5 here, but this plan is pretty versatile. Sunflowers are, kind of good across a lot of different zones, a lot of different growing conditions. The plan is you are going to start your sunflower seedlings around the beginning of April. You're going to do your first set. Let's see, I got the numbers. So the goal here is you are going to be growing sunflowers for about 12 weeks. So let's say the second week of April, you're going to make your soil blocks and you're going to seed up 125 of the orange, and then you're also going to seed up 40 each of the plum and the white knight. So in total, you'll have about 200 seeds that you're doing. You are going to start these in the beginning of April. They're going to need some heat. So they're going to need to have some warm conditions. When you first have them, you're going to put them somewhere inside your house so the heat of your house can get them to start growing. But once the seeds pop out of the ground and they're showing some sort of growth, now you need the sun. Now you need to start doing something a little annoying. In the morning, you're gonna take those seeds and you're gonna bring them outside and you're gonna put them in a sunny spot. Now, they're gonna be able to get the light that they need to grow, but they're not gonna get the cold overnight temperatures that can happen during April. About 3 weeks later, your seedlings are gonna be at the perfect size for transplanting. And honestly, sunflowers, they grow so fast, sometimes they might be ready within 2 weeks. So what you're gonna wanna do is take your 200 seedlings and bring them out to your garden. And those first seedlings that we planted kind of early April are going to be planted beginning of May. Most areas, that means you're going to be past your last frost. You know, there might still be some days that aren't perfectly warm, but you know, let's really aim for that beginning of May, because that means 60 days from then, you're gonna start having flowers in July. We're gonna do about a 12-week season. So ideally, we're gonna have flowers being picked every single week for July, August, and September. When you have those seedlings, ideally you wanna plant the Pro Cuts about 6 inches spacing apart from each other. The 6-inch spacing is gonna mean that you're gonna get that nice medium-sized sunflower head. If you plant them further apart, you know, more like a foot, you're going to get a larger flower. Plant them closer together, you're going to get a smaller flower. But the 6 inches is going to give you the size to do sunflower bunch type flowers. They're going to be the perfect size for selling to florists, nice and attractive for retail customers too. Because it's your first year growing and you have 0 experience, we planted 200 seeds, but I'm not expecting you to have 200 seedlings to plant. But let's say best case scenario, every single one of your seedlings has made it, you're going to need about 100 square feet. My advice is to actually prep up the 12 weeks worth of garden space. That means in total, you're gonna need 1,200 square feet of garden space for your sunflower farm. I'm at about the midpoint in my garden here, and this garden is about 1,500 square feet. So, you know, it is a little bit bigger than just a small flower patch. The plan here is that we are learning to grow things on a farm scale. So, you know, this isn't a 200 square foot cutting garden. This is, you know, a mini sunflower flower farm. But it is the type of space that if you have to do all of this by hand, if you have to literally dig up the soil, if you have to be weeding, weeding with your fingers, you can't afford a hoe, you can't afford it to get tilled, you can't afford anything, this is still gonna be manageable. We're gonna wanna be starting those seedlings every single week. Part of the reason why I said that we needed kind of that 9 to 12 seedling trays, which made it too expensive to be able to invest, is the fact that you're going to have things growing at different successions in the seedling trays. So if you start 3 trays a week, if you're doing a 72 tray and 200, that's gonna end up being 3 trays every week. And if they take about 3 weeks before you plant them out, that's why you need the number. So by May 1st, when you go to plant these seedlings out, you're actually gonna have 2 or 3 sets of seedlings that you've already started. What you're gonna do is you're gonna start to build this workflow where once a week, let's say on Mondays, you plant your seedlings, you know, you take a half an hour, you make your soil blocks, you put your sunflower seeds in, you got 125 of orange, 40 white, 40 plum, plant them up, and then you take your oldest trays out to your garden, you plant those 200 into the ground, and then it's going to have a flow to it. By the time your first seedlings have grown into flowering sunflowers on July 1st, you will have most of your seeds planted out, either into the garden or in the seedling trays. Because we're doing that 12-week cycle, you know, and it takes 60 days in the ground and you have a couple weeks in the seedling trays, you know, you are going to have this kind of spacing. We're saying 12 weeks for this system because if you're in a zone like me, you know, you'll kind of get to the end of September before you start getting frost to threaten. You know, if you're in an area that is a little bit warmer, you could probably go into October too, but the idea of my plan is to make this the simplest business model possible. So, you know, if you still have seeds left, once you get to that week 12, you can keep going. But, you know, don't overcomplicate things in that first year. It's March, so obviously I don't have any sunflowers growing to be able to give you examples. But it's really important that you pick these sunflowers at the correct time. One of the best things about doing a business that involves having so few products is it means you can really specialize in and put the effort to learn how to grow sunflowers exactly how they need to be grown. So with sunflowers, you want to be picking them before the petals open. You want to be picking them when the petals just start to lift. And that is going to give them the longest phase life, and it's going to be the most desirable when you're selling to both wholesale customers like florists, and also it's going to give you some extra time to get those flowers sold onto retail customers. You can sell them nice and closed up to people. They'll open in their homes, but it also means if it takes you a couple days before they sell, they'll like be fully open by the time you sell, but you won't have cut into your vase life so much that you're selling a product that people are going to be unhappy with. We planted 200 seeds for each of these weeks. But you're a brand new grower, you've never grown anything before. I don't expect you to have 200 finished flowers. The goal with this plan is to hopefully end up with 100 sellable sunflowers. And unfortunately, sunflowers aren't necessarily all going to perfectly open up on a Thursday for you to be able to pick them and sell them on the weekend. Flower farmers who have the infrastructure and the equipment, they pick the flowers at the right time and then they put them into their coolers, and the coolers keep them held at that, ideal stage for longer. So for me, when I grew the sunflowers that I did, every day I'd go out and I'd pick the sunflowers when they're right at the stage that I knew they would last the longest, had a big bucket, threw them into the cooler. And then when it came to the time to use the sunflowers, they were perfect and they were ready. They could keep in the cooler for, up to a week without it really affecting the vase life very much. But you're not going to have that sort of equipment. So you still want to be out there every day looking at your sunflowers, picking them when they're ready. If you have a little bit of space in a fridge, you could tuck some of them in there in water and store them. But let's be honest, like how much of us actually have space in a fridge? But, with this plan, you could also be selling these flowers all throughout the week. This budget doesn't leave a lot of space for marketing supplies, right? It's one thing to grow these flowers. It's another thing to know what to do with them. And that's kind of the other half to this business plan. You are gonna ideally end up with 100 sunflowers every single week that you're gonna go to sell, but how are you gonna sell them? What are you gonna do with these? Where are these gonna go? You have a few different options. First option is that you can sell them wholesale. You can find a florist who is interested in your sunflowers. You can find maybe another flower farmer who, is like, yeah, sure, I could pick up, 50 of them or 100 of them. There's a handful of different wholesale sources that you can go to and you can sell them. And the prices, you're still going to make enough money on these at wholesale that it's going to make a lot of sense for you to be building that pocket of money, that bag of money that you're going to be able to use in future years to build the more developed farm. Wholesale sunflowers, I've seen them kind of go for about $1 to $1.50, right? So if you're getting 100 of those every single week at the cheapest price, $100, and there's 12 weeks of them, you're going to end up with $1,200 at the end. That's $1,100 of profit that you've made. That's going to really expand your money that you have available to you. The other option is to sell them retail. Sunflowers, I've seen them retail for about $2 to $3 depending on your area. So there's a few different ways that you could put these together. You could do bunches of 10 at $2 each, $20 bunch. Bunches of 5 are really common. Bunches of 5 at $3 each is a $15 bunch. I see that as pricing really often in grocery stores. Because the budget was so tight, we didn't have anything for marketing. There is expenses that you're going to need to be able to take these sunflowers out in the field into, sunflowers that you sell retail. You're going to need elastics to make these bunches. Ideally, this is something maybe you can get given to you. I looked up dollar stores. They have, bags of elastics for $1.25 for me locally, so, sell one bunch and then you can get the money to buy that bag of elastics into the budget. I wrap the bouquets that I did at the farm in brown paper. So I was buying it in this big wholesale case of pre-cut sheets from Uline, but that's too much money. That's outside of the budget. But there's brown paper. It's used for construction paper. It comes in rolls, like contractors use it to put down on floors so that they don't damage floors when they work inside. And I looked it up at my local hardware store. A roll of that is $22, and I'm Canadian, so you can probably find it for a little bit cheaper down in the States. So something like that's also an option. But another thing to consider that's going to be, a little bit smaller of a price point is using tissue paper to wrap up the bouquets. I looked at the dollar stores. You can get a pack of 20 sheets of tissue paper for $1.25. You spend that $2.50 on the elastics and the tissue, and you'll get enough to, be able to last you for a couple weeks of selling. Which brings us to one of the parts about flower farming that really isn't as fun as the being out in the garden and the growing of the flowers and the picking the flowers and the playing with the flowers. And that is, when you are a flower farmer, you are a business. And so what you need to be thinking about as much as, how these plants are going to grow is how are you going to sell your product? How are you going to promote your business? How are you going to run your business? We're pretty lucky to have so many amazing free resources for, promoting ourselves nowadays with social media. When you get those first bouquets and they're looking lovely and beautiful, you need to sell them if you're going to make the money. Don't disregard family and friends. They're most likely going to be your very first customers and, hopefully your best customers in this first year when you're really getting started. And the word of mouth recommendations that you can get from them are going to be way more valuable than anything else you can do. But what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get on Facebook, and you're going to want to promote yourself in local community groups. Every area has a buy and sell group or like a community discussion group. Get on there, say, hey, I'm starting this flower farm. I have these sunflower bunches. Would love to have you support me. They're beautiful. They're a great price. They're fresh, local. Do what you need to promote it. You're also going to want to create a business page. You're going to want to get on Instagram and Facebook and create these business pages where you can kind of advertise out to your customers. And you're also going to want to use these business pages to try to be networking with other people in the industry. Reach out to other flower farmers, reach out to florists, reach out to, other places, people who are going to want to be buying your flowers. The concept of doing this sunflower only business model is that you are going to create a consistent professional product so that you can reach out to people as a consistent professional business. It's going to suck that the only product you have available is sunflowers when you reach out to these people, because people are going to be like, oh, hey, I'd love if you have this. I'd love if you have that. This. But if you can do sunflowers well, you're not going to be shooting yourself in the foot. You're way better off to do one thing well than do a million things, half-assed. So you're going to be able to create this nice professional front to yourself, and you're going to use all that sweat equity that we have, to really push your business. I do not ever recommend to people to start, doing door-to-door delivery on their $15 bouquets. I'm always like, you're better off to make sure you're building a business that's sustainable. But let's be honest, this business model isn't sustainable. This business model isn't a career. This business model is just trying to build a nest egg to be able to afford to start that bigger business in the future. So if you need to be spending an hour driving around your 10 bouquets in order to get those sales, I say go for it. Probably not going to recommend that you do something like a farmer's market. The farmer's market is something that people don't realize how expensive it is. My farmer's market that we went to, it was $50 a day just for the vendor's fee, but that wasn't really where the expense was. The expense was in the $200 tent that we owned. The expense was in the $200 worth of tables. The expense was all the tablecloths that cost money. The metal buckets that we used, we needed so many of them to hold the amount of bouquets that we had. Those were $25 each. All those little bits and pieces really add up so that the market actually cost us a few $1,000s to do. But there can be value in it for networking and promoting your business. So if your sales are going well, you feel like there's some comfortable space in your in your budget, you can consider going to a few of these markets. It's not necessarily going to be about how much money you can make in the day. It's going to be more about how it's going to build your business for years to come. Well, I don't think that growing 12 weeks worth of sunflowers is super glamorous. It's gonna take time for the business to build. You might have great success with your growing and have all these sunflowers, but really struggle to sell the flowers in the end, or vice versa. You might have lots of people who are willing to buy from you, and you're just having a really hard time getting consistently at least 100 of them to grow. But because this is going to be about a learning year, try to make lemonade out of any lemons that are thrown your way. If you get all these bouquets and all these sunflowers, but none of them sell, that's a perfect opportunity to start to make some marketing materials. Every single week, you're going to want to be taking pictures of your sunflowers. You're going to want to be taking pictures of what you're doing with them. If you have 50 sunflowers left over, a bunch of them don't sell, a great way to promote the business is to donate them. I know lots of people like to donate their flowers to old folks' homes. We used to donate our leftovers down to the food bank. And then when you donate them, take a picture. Talk on your business page about the fact that, you are donating this. Showcase your generosity. Not because you're doing it to be able to showcase it, but it's something to talk about your business. Another thing to consider is taking those flowers and turning them into something that looks really amazing. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Sunflower Steve. He was a professional sunflower grower for a long time, and he has his own sunflower variety that he's growing seeds for. But he creates the most incredible sunflower content when he has these leftover flowers where he does these flat lay pictures. You could consider doing something like that. Any attention that you can get online for your business is going to be great for your business. So, don't consider an unsold flower a complete loss. This plan is something that I hope would be manageable for most people. I hope that most people would be able to find that little bit of money that it would take to buy this product. I hope most people would be able to find that about 15 hours a week that it would take to grow and sell these products. I do think it's going to teach you all the fundamentals that there is to know about what it's going to take to do the flower farm at a larger scale. By the end of this season, you should be able to, say that you're a successful professional sunflower grower. You know how to do it right. You should say that you've learned how to make sales. You've run into some mistakes, but they haven't overwhelmed you. And hopefully by the end, you should have made about $1,500 out of all of your sales. $1,500 and a little bit of growing and selling experience, you're going to be perfectly set up for going into your second season, considering growing more product than just those sunflowers. You're going to have the money that it's going to take to be able to buy, maybe some grow lights and a few different varieties of seed. You're going to have the money that it's going to take to develop a little bit more of a growing space, and you're going to have learned how to make a consistent product from week to week. So if you've stuck around to the end, hopefully you found this business idea helpful and useful, and let me know how your farm goes.